Hi, this is Ellen Ferrara. Welcome to Top Tips for CIOs. Today we're talking to Ray Stanton about security issues for 2010. Ray, we're filming this in January and we can't help predicting what's coming up for the year ahead. So I want to talk about three issues that you've already highlighted as things that you think are going to be very big for the year. The first one, terrorism. Unfortunately, we all had to think about that over the holidays once again. But it's not just a topic for governments, it's a topic for businesses. What do CIOs need to be thinking about when it comes to their security procedures and terrorism?
Oh, that's a great point, and you're right, it is a dark topic. And the fact is we have to think carefully. The past year has been very difficult for us as organisations, but also the fact is, we have to think back to the times when, for example, 9/11, when we had all of the business continuity and disaster recovery impacts, when we had the terrorist threats. But also you have to think about today's environment, and are you as organisations actually a terrorist threat? You may not initially think you are, but it could be the fact that as an organisation you invest in something like defence organisations or organisations just that maybe terrorists think that's not what we want you to see you invest in, and actually you can become a target because of that. So you have to ask the question of your Chief Information Security Officers or your Chief Security Officers and say, what is our threat profile? Why would we be a threat to somebody? Look at your business and say, could we be a threat to somebody? And then understand how and what you need to invest in to make sure that you can manage your risk posture and those threats carefully.
So business people have always had to put themselves in the heads of their customers. But what you're saying is you've got to put yourself in the heads of people who may threaten you as well.
Absolutely, and using the PEST model or the STEP model, therefore looking at your threats from political, economical, social or technological threats. These are the things that you need to do. Understand what might be in their heads of why you could be a target.
Let's move on to the E in your STEP model, the economic threats. We're still in a recession, even though we're all quite hopeful we're coming out of it. What implication will that have on security issues in 2010?
Well, the key thing here is about understanding how we exit the recession. One of the key risks that we've seen increase has been insider threats. Last year, for example, an employee at a company called Fannie Mae in the US, they held the company to ransom because they planted some malware code within their customer database and held them to ransom. Now that person was caught. And that's the type of thing that we've seen increase exponentially over the past year. And that's continuing. So as we exit out of the recession, you need to think as an organisation, and again, as a CIO, ask your CISO and say, what are we doing about this? Have we tightened up our procedures? What access people have to data? Why they have access to that data? Get in line management to take accountability for what people have access to, but also thinking about your HR procedures and your processes. So when somebody exits the organisation, actually, are you doing it in the right way? Do you keep them legally bound not to take the information they shouldn't be allowed to take?
Well, speaking of exiting, there are a lot of predictions that as we come out of recession, there'll be a huge movement from the workplace. All these people who have been sitting tight in the bad times will move in the good times. What's the checklist for the CIO of things that must be in place as a big migration like that happens?
No, that's a great point, and I think that they're talking about 15 to 20% of the employee population starting to move. And the key thing here is about understanding the HR process, the exit processes, understanding systems access, why and what systems access did these people have access to, and the data that they have access to, and line management, fundamentally taking accountability for their employees to check that correctly. And if somebody leaves the organisation, that you have checked through appropriately and they understand exactly what they should and should not have taken and what processes they've adhered to.
Now, traditionally, the people who are most likely to move are the under 30s. And the under 30s are quite different from the rest of the employee population right now because they are so digitally connected. I know you think that this is also a very big issue to think about in 2010. Let's talk about this new generation.
And this is a great topic, and it's also a big topic that's going to exit out of 2010 and beyond. And this is all around something called the the power of four. And what this is the first time in the Western world that we've had 4 generations working together, and that's the veterans, the baby boomers, Generation X and Generation Y, and each of those terms relates to a period in time and an age range. Now, the group that you're talking to particularly around, and the social side of this, are the Generation Y, and these are basically sometimes referred to also as digital natives, and they live their lives online. They've grown up with digital devices, sharing information, and that sharing of information is called declarative living. But then you have to transport that into the workplace. And how do you ensure that while you want to attract and retain talent, you want to innovate, you want people to feel comfortable within the organisation, that at the same time you give them access to tools and applications that they've grown up with, but also that they use in their day-to-day life. You can't, for example, say, hey, guess what, we want you to work 12, 14 hours a day, but we don't want you to be able to communicate with your friends.
Right.
Now, there is a bit of a hoo-ha about whether social networking sites should be allowed in the workplace, but if you secure them appropriately, but also you educate, you give awareness, people can use them appropriately. And the best thing, you can harness the power of them as organisations, and you will innovate your people and they will innovate your organisation. So rather than being afraid of it, you have to adopt it, you have to grasp it, and you have to go with it, but at the same time work with it.
So presumably that comes down to the processes, balancing the processes and technology, which is another interview we've done on this series.
It is, and all about understanding the right processes and the technologies that you put in place to help to ensure that you can secure it and not increase your risk threat profile and posture.
All right. Thanks, Ray. Those are all interesting topics, some a bit dark, but all things that we need to think about in the year ahead. If you'd like to learn more about this and take a look at our paper on what we believe are going to be the security issues for 2010, take a look at the website. That's on bt.com/global services.